1400 hours. It's a good, chilly afternoon here in Mbabane. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Market View this Tuesday, the last Tuesday of the month of May. This is the fourth month, the second episode of this week. It's going to be an interesting episode indeed. We want to track developments happening around our business environment. We want to look at, how business Eswatini braces for the slowdown as there's a global growth cut. We also want to track the story happening where Congo speaks on U.S. funding, the revision impact on our economy. But our Enterprise Watch segment today focuses on youth unemployment. We know that the rates may be dropping, but let's not mistake that for a job well done. Nearly half of young people still locked out of the labor market. Eswatini is racing against time to turn a demographic crisis into an economic opportunity. Now, this afternoon, we speak to Mpumalanga Zwane. She's the project officer at the Youth Sustainable Development Center. It's an organization at the front line of youth empowerment, digital innovation, as well as sustainable skills development. Is the system failing our young people? It's a real question, it's a serious question, but also, what will it take to shift from potential to real lasting progress? You have to stay with us to get all the answers there. It's a conversation we cannot afford to ignore. So Sanel Sbia is in our studios. I'm being told he is ready to chime into what is really happening with markets today from Wall Street. We will look at what is happening in the Eurozone, in Asia, want to track the equities as well as the currencies as well. What is really happening there with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And when we speak about the GSE, we pretty much are speaking about the Eswatini Stock Exchange, but a conversation we will have in our last segment on the show. So thank you for joining us once again. Let's start the show by looking at the first story of our business news. The International Monetary Fund has revised global economic growth to 2.8%, down from 3.3% in January, amid while that spells trouble for many. Business Eswatini says it could have been worse, reacting to the news. Business Eswatini CEO Inathi Dlamini says job creation and private sector production locally will slow slightly.
In his budget speech in February this year, the Minister for Finance, Honorable Nel Rickenberg, stated that Eswatini's 2025 gross domestic product growth is projected to peak at 8.3%, the highest in 30 years. The International Monetary Fund statistics in January put the projections at 4.2% growth. Business Eswatini says, taking into consideration all the latest developments, the projections may have to be revised downwards.
The global policy predictability is haywire at this point, which means global businesses cannot plan. And you'll be well aware that when the tariffs were applied, some of them are outrageously high, as we are well aware, up to 145%. Now they've been paused for another 90 days. We don't know whether they will be resuscitated or revived at some point. We don't know. But all we know is that the deleterious effects of these decisions now, the impact will be felt 3 months from now, and it will not be pretty. Unfortunately, the global supply chains are so integrated worldwide to the point that they affect us even in Africa. What happens in Europe and elsewhere affects us here. And as such, that's why even COMESA has revised their figures even downwards. We cannot be totally impervious to those developments. But also, remember, we are also affected because the tariffs also affect us. They've levied tariffs on us. And the baseline tariff is 10%, even in this country. We didn't have that before. Across the board, every country of the world. Now imagine you putting a constraint of 10% across the whole world. What do you think will happen? We have ships now which are being monitored right now. Supply ships, they've stopped at sea carrying goods. That's GDP, because they cannot land because of high tariffs. Some of them are even turning back. So it is highly probable that at some point in time, we may, as a global community, experience what you call a recession. And we are hoping this country has been very economically resilient, by the way. I mean, we've posted some very, very good figures the past 2 years, and the projections are even much better for this country. But also, we may have to revise them a little bit downwards as well. Business Eswatini has been engaging the U.S. Embassy. They come to our offices, they are briefing us literally on a blow-by-blow basis. Our meeting was a few days ago as well. So they are keeping us informed to help us amplify the message to the business community so that they can plan better.
We also asked the Chief Executive Officer on whether the trade war and downward economic outlook will have an impact on employment and production locally.
Of course, we expect that. But to what extent that will happen, we don't know. But I can guarantee you, with what's happening right now, there will be a slowdown, job creation in our exports, in everything that we do. Because like I said, we are not totally impervious to what has happened. It will affect us very, very badly. So it will slow us down. Probably not as bad as other countries, though, let me say that, because our baseline is 10%. Other countries is even worse.
The International Monetary Fund recently revised the economic growth for South Africa, Eswatini's largest trading partner, from 1.5% in January to 1%. This shows a 0.5% slower growth than predicted for this year. For Market View, Nelson Dlangamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa.
Now, the revision of funding by the United States of America has non-governmental organizations like Congo also raising concerns that the local economy will be greatly affected. Now, this was said by the Chief Executive Director, Thembinkosi Dlamini, when reacting to the revised 2.8% global economic growth by the International Monetary Fund that was released last week.
We think we are going to be impacted a lot, especially since January, about 26 January, we received letters from the U.S. government, which is one of the governments that is contributing for finance for development overall, to say they are going to be making adjustment. Now in April, a number of our organizations have received indications that their projects are now being cut. Some of them are being allowed to go on. But those projects that are going on are too few for them to make an impact, because as you know, these projects were responsible for these climate actions that I'm talking about, livelihoods projects, agriculture, education, capacity building, entrepreneurship, and human rights work. So a lot of that work is now not going on in the country and countries overall, which means there's too few US dollars floating around at the moment, hence the adjusted outlook.
Let's speak to Mpumalanga Zwane after the break.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. According to the National Labour Market Skills Project Anticipation Report, youth unemployment has fallen from 58.2% in 2021 to 48.7%. But the fight is far from over. Today in studio, we're joined by Mpumalanga Zwane, Project Officer from the Youth Sustainable Development Center, an organization that is driving youth empowerment through sustainable development. She's going to share how the organization is unlocking young potential, as well as creating innovative pathways to economic opportunity and skills development. Welcome to the show. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Look, I'm looking at the numbers here, and I want to start with the headline number. Very important. Youth unemployment at 48.7%. Now, it's down from 58.2%, but still unacceptably high, so to speak, right?
Yes, that's true.
What does this figure tell you, as Mpumalanga, about where we are and how far we still have to go?
What this number tells us as the Youth Sustainable Development Center is that there is a need for just overall nationally for us to look at how better can we ensure that the young people that we are educating, the young people who are going through our different education system and entering into the age of employment, that they have something that they can enter into, and creating an environment that is enabling for them to be able to access either jobs or entrepreneurial opportunities. And so then as an organization who's very keen on youth participating in initiatives that contribute towards development, sustainable development initiatives, we then say that as young people, there are also ways that we can contribute towards this. And this is to ensure that the enterprises that we are able to develop and the projects that we engage in are not just projects that can assist you today, but then look at it in a way that you will be able to be innovative and competitive and be able to sustain yourself. Because the truth is, as much as the country itself can also do the right things in terms of policy and creating an enabling environment, the truth is, as young people, there are no jobs in the way that they were back then when our parents were still young and coming out and you could get a job with just your Form 5 certification. Yeah. Now, as young people, we need to find more innovative ways to access the market.
First of all, let me say I love the first three words of the makeup of the center: youth sustainable development.
Yes,
very important. But you are not only focusing on just jobs, the conversation around jobs, but you are very much, focused on innovation. You are focused on civic participation, as well as sustainability, as, in your name. Talk to me about how this approach becomes more effective in today's climate.
Today's climate is such an exciting one because it is ever-changing. The technology of AI, just 2 years back, many of us were not as accustomed to it. But now we are seeing how it is shifting the environment and creating new opportunities for young people. And this is very indicative of the type of world that our young people are living in today. Things are ever-changing, ever-evolving, and they require us to have an innovative a mindset that is ready and able to adapt and is agile in the environment that we're living in. So as Youth Sustainable Development Center, we are very excited when it comes to youth development. Our approach is ensuring that young people understand that the world that they live in is not just their backyard, but to look outside of the world that they are staying in and look outside just their immediate frame of reference, and also understand that they are they're a national citizen and a global citizen. And in that way, the ideas and the possibilities also widen, which is why as a center, we also have opportunities for young people, such as the WhatsApp group, where we share continuously opportunities, both local and international.
When you say opportunities, you talk about job opportunities as well as educational opportunities.
We talk about a wide range of opportunities that are available to Eswatini, whether it is jobs, whether it is fellowships, skills development, funding, all types of opportunities, as long as it is available for Eswatini and it's available to young people, we will share it. And then for those who are maybe not as comfortable being on a WhatsApp group, because we know for some people that can be a bit overwhelming, we have also recently developed a virtual opportunities board where young people can go on there and access and look at some of the resources and opportunities that we've shared in this group.
Yeah.
And in that way, we believe that by engaging in some of these different platforms and signing on to some of these programs, it will allow young people to open their minds to what else is going on in the world,
Yes.
introduce them to new skills. And I used to love one thing that my father used to say, that skill and knowledge is something that someone can never take away from you.
Absolutely.
So even if your business maybe is affected by different things, if you are continuously improving yourself and developing yourself and being updated with what's going on, you then stand a better opportunity to then redirect your business, re-strategize, and see what other opportunities are out there, so that you can become someone who is sustainable and who has the capacity to stand the test of time.
And that kind of learning should be perpetual. Indeed, I agree with you. But I also want us to talk about rural youth as well as young women, particularly because they are often the last to benefit from any sort of economic growth. What are some of the hard realities that you have gathered that they are facing that do not make it more often than not into policy briefs or conversations in government and other important rooms?
The first part that we have noticed is in terms of just access. When you think about the fact that a lot of opportunities are very much centered around the Manzini-Mbabane corridor, this is something that I realized, having grown up outside of that space. When I eventually moved this side, there were so many more things that were available to me that I didn't know. So that's the first step. And then also the intergenerational gap that we see, to say, how is it that our young people can be able to engage with the older generation so that their initiatives also receive the support, because we do training with young people on youth engagement, and we also train other institutions and communities. And one of the things that we have found is that even the older generation themselves are not always don't always have the skills on how to engage young people. And yet, as much as young people, we are the drivers of our own future. The best scenario that you can have when it comes to youth engagement and youth participation is when there is a partnership between the young people and the older generation, because the young people, they have the energy, they have the drive, and then the older generation has the knowledge and the wisdom. And if you join those two things together, you can have such a very powerful combination. And so when it comes to young people in the rural areas, you find that they don't have the same access, and they don't always have that same level of the same ability to engage their local leaders the way that they should.
I am being advised to wrap up our conversation with the last question, and I want us to be very blunt and honest here. Are we really seeing youth participation in policymaking decisions, or they just show up for the photos, these group photos that we see on LinkedIn and on X by a lot of these organizations, where we do see the youth presence, but are they really involved in terms of the, influencing that policy and how it influences them further?
Yeah, that is a hectic question, but I will say it's a bit of a hit and miss. We still do have some of those biases that deter some of the participation and make it so that it is not as effective as it can be, although I can say that we have seen more improvement in terms of how many young people are in the space. I think as a young person now, there are more opportunities to be in the space, but it just means that as a young person, you also have to be prepared to go out there and take those opportunities.
Mpumalanga, thank you for your time. The conversation sits at the center of economic opportunity and skills development, but all of it must be sustainable. Let's go for a net break. We have Sunny Lesbia chiming into what the markets are telling us today with the numbers.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.sz. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
It's 22 minutes after 2. This is our market analysis with Sunny Lesbia. We are seeing global markets trading cautiously today. Wall Street being very mixed, while the Nasdaq slightly down with the Dow inching higher. While in Eswatini, the attention is pretty much centered around currency movement and commodity pressures, especially as Brent crude continues to dip and the Lilangeni strengthens against the US dollar. Sunny, welcome to the program. Very good afternoon to you. Let's begin with, first and foremost, let's see the big picture. U.S. markets. We're seeing here they are largely flat. Nasdaq slightly in the red. What is driving investor sentiment on Wall Street at the current moment?
Thank you, Ngumalo, and good afternoon to the viewers. So right now, you know, the markets, for lack of a better word, have just decided to blue tick the political uncertainties and are just focusing on earnings. Right. As we build up to Thursday, we are waiting to see what Amazon and what Meta and what Microsoft are going to be posting in terms of those earnings. So in as much as we may have seen a bit of some mixed earnings this month, like we saw your NVIDIA, you know, just not performing very well as one would have expected, purely because there was those issues around the tariffs. But overall, the markets are just holding steady and focusing on earnings, and also just waiting to see what's going to happen, you know, on Friday when we see that non-farm payroll data, the unemployment numbers, to see if these first 180 days of Donald Trump in office have actually had a dent on a positive or negative dent on the unemployment figures and, you know, the new jobs that have been created.
It's quite interesting. While you talk about blue ticks in Wall Street, the European markets continue to show a bit of optimism or resilience, if you like. You know, what is really influencing this? Because I'm seeing marginal moves here.
Again, it's still earnings season both in Europe and also in the US. So that's what the markets are doing. So right now what we have is a situation of, yes, we do have uncertainty, but that 90-day, you know, that 90-day freeze in terms of those tariffs and, you know, focus and the ability for markets to purely focus on earnings and the data that's going to come out without necessarily looking that much into the political tensions and those tariff tensions, those trade war tensions that are looming. And it would seem we are inching closer to a deal with between China and the US, and so that makes markets a bit relaxed for now. For the next 90 days, they're just going to be riding that wave. And so that when you're looking into what's happening in London again, it's an issue of those earnings, the likes of your HSBC banks have actually posted very good earnings for this quarter. And then markets are moving to that same thing when you look at what is happening in Germany, and also that freeze in terms of those in terms of the parts for vehicles, those automotive makers, they are in a way getting a bit of ground there. In France, we're still facing those issues around the public debt and effective management of the public debt and what that is going to mean. So that's why we're seeing France penduluming between the green and the red. But overall, it's a good move. On average, if you are tracking the CAC 40 across the day, you are actually getting an overall positive trend.
Yeah, absolutely. Despite that red that people may be seeing at home now. Asian markets, this is a positive, modest positive overall, but the Shanghai, there it is. It is slightly down. What is really happening here? And I know I'm asking you because there could be a story around China's recovery or demand around their supplies.
Yeah, so what we're seeing with the Shanghai numbers, basically, Mr. Nxumalo, is the entire world, the whole of the Asian region has actually moved to the news that the Central Bank of China and the finance minister in China are actually going to pump in a stimulus into the markets. But companies within the mainland they are waiting to see if that really does come into fruition. And we've seen that test of a new chip that might actually move Chinese technology companies away from NVIDIA into a chip that's been manufactured in China. And if you remember the story of DeepSeek, they were using one such chip. So right now they are even testing a much better version of the chip, and the results seem promising, even though it's a comsi type of a situation. But it's a start, and it is promising, and it has been in a position to put a dent on the share price of NVIDIA, right? But overall, positive trend.
Right, I need you to, really, because we literally have 2 minutes. Let's see what is happening with everything else, the JSE, ESE, as well as commodities and currencies.
No. So in the JSE, what we are seeing right now is there's a bit of that calm. Tariffs are gone, and the budget has been passed. Thank God they're going to have a budget without VAT. So the markets are moving positively to that. At least there's a bit of stability going forward, and gold continues to show up that market. So when you move into commodities, we're seeing gold losing a bit of ground, returning to that 3,000 mark, and if this stability continues to hold, we should see gold inching closer to that 3,000 mark as long as the dollar remains stable. And then in terms of Brent crude again, because again the uncertainty is gone, the Iran story is somehow stabilizing. Brent crude is also losing a bit of ground while we're waiting to see the numbers. Actually, when you look at that future contract, what's weighing heavily on that future contract price is the economic data that we are waiting to come out from the US on Friday, those growth figures and those inflation figures, the employment figures. And then in terms of currencies, gold still on the positive, and the Lilangeni remains relatively strong against the dollar, the euro, and also against the Japanese yen, even though you might see those marginal declines. But overall, when you're tracking the trend, we're still on a relatively stronger footing compared to where we were a couple of weeks ago, very close to that 19 type of region.
Interesting indeed. Sandra, thank you so much for your insights. Really appreciate you on our show. A very cautious but telling start to the trading week is what we can really summarize our conversation on. This has been Market View, the Tuesday edition. Have yourself a good afternoon. Bye-bye.